In this video, I'm going to be going over what actions are and how you can create them and use them with your agents. So the first thing you're going to want to do is head over to this Actions tab here on the left side of your page in the navigation bar. And what you'll see if you don't already have any actions is this section that says no actions created. Create your first action to make your agent more powerful. And then we can either click this create action button or we can click this new action button here in the toolbar. We'll start off by just clicking either one. I'll start with clicking this create action, which will take us to the create new action page. And so one of the biggest key things here is to not overcomplicate this, because if you're not somebody who's familiar with programming or how data is being sent over the internet, then this might seem a little confusing to you. But what I can tell you is take a few steps back and realize that this is very simple. And you should not try to overcomplicate this or think that this is complicated, because you will convince yourself that it is. So let's start off with step one, which is the basic information. This defines how the AI identifies as and uses this action. For example, if you had a tool bag on you and you had a bunch of different tools in there, you would, and you've never seen them before, how would you know which ones do what? Okay, so you want to be really descriptive here and describe to your agent what it is that you're building, right? What it is that this tool does and what is the name. So if you pulled the tool out of your tool bag and it had a label on it, what would be the most descriptive thing on that tool that let you know what it did? So try to put yourself in that framework. So I'm going to go ahead and give you an example of building a tool or an action that helps the AI look product prices up in a database. That's our example. So let's say someone's calling in about your store and you've got tons of different products and you want your agent to be able to ask them what product they're calling in about, and if they want to know the price, how it can look up the price in a certain database or something like that. So we're going to keep this very high level because there's a million different ways you can build these for different use cases. So this is just going over the steps so you know how to build one for your use case. So we'll start off by calling this fetch product price. And as you notice, there's these little underscores. That's because this has to be typed in a certain way. Um, there cannot be any spaces at all. All right, there has to be underscores, and we can't have any funky stuff like we can't have uppercase letters or anything like that. It has to be within this framework here. Luckily, we have that type guarded for you, so you can't type something in that the system will reject. So once we have fetch product price, we want the agent to be able to pull that tool bag out and see that it says, okay, we're going to use this to fetch a product price. But we also want to be a little more descriptive in case they're a little confused. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in. So this is a great example of how you would use a description. This tool will fetch the price for a given product based on the product number that the user provides. This tool will not work if the product number is not provided by the user. This means if somebody calls into the store and says, I want to know a little bit more about how much this bookshelf costs, the agent will say, sure, I can look that up for you. I just need the product number, right? Are you looking, did you find this item online, or where did you find this item, right? And then it can instruct it on how to find that product number so it can give it that price. In most scenarios, if they have the product number, they'd already know what the product price is likely. But just in this event, we're just going over an example of how to build a tool, okay, and what this actions system works, how it works. So the hidden field under here that says optional advanced settings, again, not super complicated, but this says enable strict data mode. You'll probably leave this on most of the time. The AI will only use this action when all required parameters are available, right? What that means is the AI will only pull this tool out of its tool bag and use it if the product number has already been provided. If not, then it's not going to try to use this because it knows it's going to break. Okay, so that's essentially what this does. So we'll just leave that checked and proceed to our next step. This is saying server configuration. And just so you know, our agents can do anything over the internet. Okay, and that empowers them to do a lot of things. But in order for them to be able to get that product price, they need to go somewhere to get that. All right, and you might not have a flow built in for that, but you can build any flow you want to do anything. And so I have this make.com scenario pulled up to show you how this works. And this works for Zapier, this works for Go High Level, this works for HubSpot, this works for N8N, whatever it is that you're using that has a webhook, it will work, okay? Just needs a place online that it can go to start the process. So I'm going to go ahead and kick this off with a webhooks module. That's how Make likes to start their scenarios if it's online based. And we'll create a new webhook and we'll just call it AV for Agent Voice demo. And I'll go ahead and save it. You don't have to worry about any of this stuff. You might not even be using Make, and that's okay. You don't have to use Make for this, but this is just an example. Make now provides our webhook URL, which is what you're going to need if you're going to be sending information, like booking an appointment. You're going to need somewhere to book that appointment. It could be Google Calendar's API. But in this event, Make gives us this URL. So we're just going to go ahead and copy this. And we're going to tell our agent to send that product number here. Bam. Optional advanced settings. You don't have to touch this unless you need to. So in the event that you're using a platform or some sort of system that requires an API key, you can place that in here. And this gives you a little bit of information about how that's sent. Oopsies. How that is sent. So it's going to be sent in the header, and this is going to be the name of the header, and this will be the value. And if you're not familiar with that stuff, that's okay. However, if you want to create your own header with its own name and its own value, you can do that here as well. This is just conveniently placed for you so you don't have to do this. All right, so I'm not going to mess with those right now. I'm going to leave them blank, and we're going to proceed with our information, meaning what information do we need to actually use this tool, right? It's kind of like a hammer. You can't use a hammer really that well unless you've got nails. And so here we're going to tell our AI agent that in order to use our tool, like a hammer, it needs the nails. So we're going to describe to it that it's going to need a product number in order for this function to work. Bam. Now this will be asking you, what is the parameter's data type? Now again, don't overcomplicate this. Essentially what this is saying is there's a little eye icon here, a little information icon that tells you a little bit more information about what this means, but don't overcomplicate it because it's not complicated. This is essentially saying, what am I going to be sending over? Is it going to be text? Am I going to be sending over a number? So this would be a product number, and you would think that number would be the correct option to select here, but this means the agent can only use numbers. So 1 through 0, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, only numbers. However, some products might have letters in them. So that would bring us back to text. So the product ID or our number might look something like this, for example. It could be like, that could be like a product number. So because there's characters in here, that breaks the need to use the number field. And in most scenarios, you can leave it as text, okay? In some parameters, like you could say has booked appointment before, you would select true or false, and it'll return true or false to your system. So it'll ask them, hey, have you set an appointment before? And they'll say yes. And once it's time to use this later in the conversation, it'll return whether or not they've booked an appointment before. And it can only be a true or false statement. It can't be anything else. So that's what this parameter data type is. It's just to help you get the right information delivered. And you could leave this in here and tell it to respond with true or false, but this is a more reliable method of doing that. So right now we're working with product number, so we're going to stick with text, and we're going to go ahead and type in a little description of what this information looks like. So this is a pretty simple description. This will be a serial number or a product ID that is needed to look up the product and get the right price. So what's cool is we add this description, and as the agent's asking these questions in order to use this, it's going to be able to see that description. So it'll know how to ask it. Like, do you see a serial number, any product ID or anything like that? So it's up to you on how you want to describe what this is, but you'll know best because you're working within the system. But this really helps the agent identify what to ask for so that when it sends that information to our server, which would be Make in this case, Make will receive the right information. And again, there's another optional advanced settings field here where you can add a validation pattern. If you really want to be super, super precise with what's returned, most of the time you might not need to mess with this. And then there's a required parameter saying, if you don't have the product number, then you can still use this, but we'll need something else, like a product name, right? Or a product, some other way to identify the product. But in this event, since it's the only thing that we can use to identify the product, it is required. So we're going to leave that as it is. Cool. Let's go ahead and proceed to our messages. Now, this is again very simple. This is essentially saying there's 4 different stages of using this tool. The agent will start using it, meaning it's sending over the information to the place you told it to, which would be Make, and it's going to say something once it starts. Okay. Now, just so you know, the agent's already going to say something. You don't have to strictly define what it's going to say unless you want it to say the same thing every single time when it uses this tool. For example, if you made it a booking appointment action, then it'll say something like, I'm booking your appointment now. And if you want really fine control over what it says when it starts to do that, you could type that in here. But most of the time, it's perfect as it is. The AI will know what to say when it starts to use it, and you don't have to fill this in. There's also a complete stage, meaning once it's booked the appointment or once it found the product price, what does it say? In this event, you don't want to have a complete because the product price will change, and you don't want it to say something that is, the same thing every time, because that product price is going to change. So you definitely want to leave this empty because the AI will need to come up with a message on its own based off of the product price that it got back after it gave the product number to your server. There's a failed message, meaning it tried to find the product number, but maybe the product number was invalid and it returned an error. And so, what do you want it to say? Again, the AI will come up with something. So, you don't have to put something in here if you don't want to. And then there's a delayed message. Let's say it's taken a while to find that product. What does it say? You could define that here. And again, it'll do it on its own. I recommend leaving it blank, as I think that's the most reliable way to do that. So let's go ahead and proceed with our review stage. And this will tell us the name of our product. So this is what the agent will see. Let's say they say, hey, what's the product? What's the price for this product? And then they give the product number, or maybe the agent's like, sure, what's the product number? Then it'll know to use this, right? And then this is the description that really helps it define when it needs to use this. Tells you what mode it's in, meaning all the required parameters must be available. There's only one for us, and it's the product number. And we also strictly define that it's required here as well. Here's our server. Here's some information about the request we're making and the messages. So this all looks good. And to summarize, this is essentially saying this tool will fetch the product price for a product based on the product number that the user provides. The tool will not work if the product number is not provided by the user. The server, the product number, once provided, will be sent to here. I'm just speaking this out in layman's term. And then here's what the server is going to receive. It's going to receive the product number in the format of a string, which just means text. All right, it's not going to be a number. It's not going to be true or false. It's going to be a string, which could be like a name or, again, letters, characters, something like that. And it's required. And so that looks good to me. So we're good to go. We'll hit create action. Now we have our very first action, which we can click into and delete or edit. So let's go ahead and proceed. Attach this new action to our agent voice demo. I'll go ahead and click into here. Let's go to tools, and we're going to go to custom tools right here. And now we can add our extended tool right here, which is fetch product price. And once we've clicked into it, don't forget to save. And now our agent has access to this tool on a live call. Okay. And so that is how you create a custom action. And you also have access to all these really cool pre-built in-call tools and post-call tools that you can use as well. And that summarizes how you create an action and how you attach an action on Agent Voice.